I studied microbiology and immunology with a focus on parasitology, not parapsychology, the study of parasites, parasitology. So the scientific method has always been something that has been near and dear to me. And then, of course, later on as a special agent, when you're conducting investigations, for me, I was always very fact driven, kind of the old gumshoe, if you will, just the facts, ma'am, sort of guy. So I was never really prone to any type of, if you will, affinity towards science fiction or even the UFO topic. I just never really considered it.
So he says this to you, and then how? So we're talking about like what, 16 years ago? 15, 16 years ago?
Yeah, do the math, right? So it's 2024, 2000, early 2009.
So this is the beginning of your journey towards this sort of bizarre subject of whatever these things are.
Yeah.
So you don't have any real previous interest. He says this to you, and then what's the steps after that? Like, how do you get introduced to this idea that these things are alien crafts?
Yeah. So great question. So for some people, there's kind of two ways people process this information, at least in my experience. And there may be others. This has just been my observation. Some people have this kind of revelatory moment, this epiphany where it's this aha moment where, oh my gosh, this is real, right? Mm-hmm. For other people, it's kind of more of a slow, gradual realization. And I think for me, I was probably in the second category, more of a slow, gradual realization that this isn't, a cover for something else. This is really about UFOs.
So how do you first get introduced to these things?
Well, I didn't get introduced to these things. It was, first of all, I was introduced to the reporting, right? So there was these official reports that we were getting from the field. There's official videos and whatnot that describe vehicles doing things, maneuvering in ways that frankly outperform anything we have in our inventory. Now, keep in mind, my background was at some point in aerospace. So I knew all the capabilities of an F-16 or, for example, an F-22 or the F-35. And at the end of the day, as advanced as they are, they're still conventional aircraft. They still have the old, there's an adage they use for jet engines. It may seem a little awkward here, but it's suck, squeeze, bang, and blow. That's what a jet engine does. Forgive me, that's what it does.
Right.
And so it's a conventional type engine. Of course, you have a propeller too that can displace air and whatnot. These vehicles were different. These vehicles, for the most part, didn't have any type of associated characteristic that you or I or any normal person would associate with the plane, with an airplane, an aircraft, right? And yet it's flying. So how does an airplane work? Well, let's say this cigar, for example, is an airplane, and there's four fundamental forces. And so you have thrust, lift, drag, and weight. And if you understand those, you can build wings, and you create lift, and you can fly. And then you have to have an engine for that thrust and whatnot. The things that our military pilots were encountering didn't have that. They didn't have wings. They didn't have rudders and ailerons and control surfaces. They didn't have cockpits. They didn't have engines. No obvious signs of propulsion. They were doing things and maneuvering in ways that, frankly, defied anything that we had in our inventory. And we were pretty certain the enemies didn't have either. Our adversary didn't have these technologies either. And even more perplexing is that they were being encountered over controlled U.S. airspace and over sensitive military installations. So, from that perspective, you've got a real national security concern on your hands.
So you said video.
Mm-hmm.
What was do you remember the first thing that you saw?
Boy, there's so many. I think part of the challenge is that most people here in this country, they're familiar with the three videos, right, that have been famously released by the Pentagon.
The Go Fast,
Gimbal, FLIR, correct.
Right.
But those are the least compelling of all the videos that the government has. Those were unclassified, and so those were kind of the low-hanging fruit that could be released to the general public. There's stuff out there that's like 4K ultra high definition, right? So when you see something like that from a certain military platform or a certain military equity or an intelligence collection platform, you have to look at that and say, well, what is that? What the hell is that? And more importantly, that data is being backed up by radar data, right? So you've got electro-optical data like gun camera footage or pod or FLIR